Why saving alone will never make you financially free. My name is Walter Hayes. I am 84 years old. I have lived through inflation that destroyed savings overnight. I have lived through decades when interest rates paid nothing. I have lived through markets that collapsed, recovered, collapsed again, and kept going. And after all these years, I want to say something that sounds responsible, but is deeply misleading. Saving alone will never make you financially free. Not in America. Not in this system. Not in the economy you are living in today. The advice that sounds safe, but isn't. From the time we are young, Americans are taught one primary financial virtue. Save your money. Put some aside. Build an emergency fund. Max out your savings account. Be careful. Be conservative. This advice sounds mature. It sounds prudent. It sounds wise. And it is incomplete. Because saving protects you from short-term shocks. It does not protect you from long-term dependency. I have met thousands of people who saved faithfully for decades and still retired anxious. Not because they did something wrong, but because they were told half the truth. The American fear of risk. Americans are paradoxical about money. We admire risk takers, but we fear risk personally. So we save. We avoid volatility. We cling to cash. Savings feels safe because it doesn't move. But here is the first uncomfortable truth. Money that does not move is quietly losing power. Inflation does not announce itself loudly. It erodes silently. 1 year at a time. One grocery bill at a time. One medical expense at a time. You don't feel it until you need your money and realize it doesn't stretch as far as you expected. What savings actually do and what they don't. Let's be clear. Savings are not useless. They serve a purpose. Savings are shock absorbers. They give you breathing room. They reduce panic. But savings do not produce income. They do not scale. They do not replace labor. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. If your entire financial plan depends on not touching your savings, then your life depends on your ability to keep working. That is not freedom. That is deferred dependency. The illusion of control. Savings give the illusion of control. You see the number, you know where it is. You can access it. That visibility creates comfort. But comfort is not the same as independence. True financial freedom is not about how much money you can access today. It is about how little you are forced to do tomorrow. If your savings do not generate cash flow, then they are a countdown clock. Every withdrawal brings you closer to zero. I learned this the hard way. In my early 40s, I was a model saver. I maxed accounts. I delayed gratification. I avoided unnecessary spending. On paper, I was doing everything right. But one evening, while reviewing my finances, I realized something deeply unsettling. My savings could support me for a limited time. My income could support me indefinitely, as long as I kept working. And if I stopped working, the clock started ticking. That was not freedom. That was a longer leash. The retirement math nobody explains clearly. Most Americans are told to save enough for retirement, but no one explains what enough really means. Let me explain it simply. If you need $60,000 per year to live, and your money does not produce income, you are withdrawing $60,000 every year, plus inflation. That means your savings are shrinking while your expenses are growing. This is not a plan. It is a race against time, and time eventually wins. Why saving feels responsible, and investing feels dangerous. Savings feel moral. Investing feels speculative. But that emotional distinction is misleading, because risk is not volatility. Risk is running out of options. A person with cash savings and no income-producing assets is exposed to inflation risk, longevity risk, healthcare cost risk, policy changes, market cycles. Savings do not remove these risks. They only delay the moment you feel them. The dependency problem. Here is the core issue most Americans never articulate. Savings keep you dependent on employers, pension promises, Social Security assumptions, market stability, government solvency. Assets reduce dependence. That difference is everything. Freedom does not come from money you can spend. It comes from income you do not have to earn. The middle class trap. I have seen this pattern for decades. A disciplined saver works for 40 years. They retire carefully. They budget. They worry. Every major expense feels dangerous. They are not poor, but they are not free. They spend their retirement managing fear instead of enjoying time. And all because their financial plan was built on preservation instead of production. Why America loves the saving narrative? Because it keeps people compliant. Savers are cautious, predictable, risk-averse. They don't challenge systems. They don't demand optionality. They wait. Ownership creates leverage. Leverage creates independence. Independence creates unpredictability. Systems do not encourage that. They encourage patience without power. What financial freedom actually requires. Let me say this plainly. Financial freedom requires cash flow that does not depend on your labor. That cash flow can come from businesses, rental real estate, dividend-paying companies, royalties, equity ownership. Savings alone produce none of these. They are inert, useful, but inert. The false security of enough. Many people believe that if they just save enough, they will feel secure. But security built on a finite pile is fragile. True security comes from renewing income, income that replaces itself, income that adjusts with time, income that continues when you slow down. This is why wealthy families do not live off savings. They live off systems. The emotional cost of saving only thinking. Saving only thinking changes how you live. You become conservative with experiences. You avoid risk even when it is necessary. You delay life. You don't ask, what can I build? You ask, what can I preserve? That mindset shrinks your world, and over time it shrinks your options. Why high savers often feel more anxious. This surprises many people, but the most anxious retirees I have met were disciplined savers, because they understood something intuitively. Once the withdrawals start, there is no rewind. Every expense feels irreversible. That psychological pressure is exhausting. Assets remove that pressure. Assets replenish. Savings deplete. The role savings should play. Savings are not the enemy. They are the foundation. But foundations are not houses. Savings should exist too. Absorb shocks. Provide flexibility. Support investment decisions. Prevent forced selling. They should not be the strategy. They should be the buffer. The moment everything changed for me. In my early 50s, I stopped asking how much I could save. I started asking how much I could own. Not impressively, not quickly, quietly. Assets that produce small, reliable cash flow. That decision changed the trajectory of my life. Why this matters more now than ever. America today is not the America of my youth. Healthcare is more expensive. Longevity is longer. Pensions are rare. Inflation is structural. Saving alone is increasingly insufficient. The margin for error is smaller, which means structure matters more. The hard truth. Saving is defensive. Wealth building is constructive. Defense keeps you in the game. Construction changes the outcome. You cannot defend your way to freedom. You must build. What comes next? In the next part, I will explain why being debt-free is not the same as being free, why income without ownership increases fragility, the difference between consuming assets and building them, and the exact mindset shift that separates people who save forever from people who quietly become independent. Saving is a beginning, but it is not the destination. Why saving feels safe but keeps you trapped? There is something Americans rarely admit out loud. Saving feels virtuous, but it also feels limiting, because deep down you know something uncomfortable. No matter how carefully you save, you are still living off past effort, and past effort does not adapt. The illusion of playing it safe. Many people tell themselves, I'm not trying to get rich, I just want to be safe. That sentence sounds mature, but safety without adaptability is fragile, because the world does not freeze to protect your savings. Prices change, policies change, health changes, markets change, and savings do not respond. They sit still while everything else moves. Why saving punishes longevity? Here is a cruel paradox of modern America. People live longer than ever, but plan financially as if life ends earlier. When I was young, retirement meant 10 to 15 years. Today it can mean 25 to 35 years. That changes the math entirely. Saving-only strategies assume a short runway. Long life requires renewable income, not finite reserves. The longevity trap. The longer you live, the more dangerous savings only becomes, because every additional year increases medical exposure, increases inflation impact, increases dependency risk. Savings turn longevity into a liability. Assets turn longevity into an advantage. That difference is rarely explained clearly. Why people cling to saving anyway? Because ownership feels complex. Because investing feels uncertain. Because no one wants to admit they don't fully understand money. Saving is simple. Ownership requires learning. And learning requires humility. the psychological comfort of cash. Cash feels honest. You earned it. You can see it. You control it. Assets feel abstract. But abstraction is not danger. Ignorance is. And avoiding ownership because it feels uncomfortable does not remove risk. It concentrates it. The myth of, I'll start investing later. Later rarely comes. Later gets postponed by children, mortgages, careers, emergencies, fear. And before you realize it, time becomes the limiting factor, not money. Time is the one resource savings cannot replace. The difference between saving and positioning. Saving preserves your position. Ownership improves it. That distinction explains why two people with the same income and discipline end up in completely different places. One protected what they had. The other built something that grew. Why America underteaches ownership? Because ownership challenges authority. Owners think long-term. They question assumptions. They wait instead of react. Savers comply. They follow rules. They avoid disruption. They depend on stability. The system functions better when most people save quietly and hope. It becomes unstable when people demand independence. What wealth builders understand early. They understand one simple principle. Money must work harder than you do, not occasionally, not someday, consistently. That does not mean recklessness. It means intention. The role of debt, the part no one explains honestly. Debt terrifies savers. But debt is not inherently the enemy. Unproductive debt is. Debt used to consume locks you in. Debt used to acquire cash-flowing assets can accelerate independence. The difference is purpose. Saving avoids debt. Wealth building uses debt carefully. Why being debt-free still isn't freedom? I have met many debt-free people who were terrified of losing income. No mortgage, no loans, no payments. Still anxious. Because debt-free without income-producing assets still means no leverage, no margin, no replacement for labor. Freedom is not the absence of obligations. It is the presence of options. How assets change your psychology. When income comes without effort, something changes. You stop panicking. You stop reacting. You stop chasing. Decisions slow down. Thinking improves. Patience increases. That psychological shift alone is worth more than the money. Why small assets matter more than big savings. Most people wait for enough to invest. That is backwards. Small assets teach ownership thinking early. They compound in experience before they compound in money. And experience compounds faster. What I'd tell a 35-year-old saver. Today I would say this. Keep saving, but stop worshiping it. Use savings to buy learning, buy optionality, buy positioning, not just to delay fear. The quiet advantage of builders. Wealth builders do not look impressive early. They live smaller. They delay upgrades. They ignore trends. But over time, something subtle happens. They stop needing permission. And that is the moment freedom begins. Why freedom feels unfamiliar? Because most people grow up with dependency. Dependency on employers. Dependency on markets. Dependency on institutions. Freedom feels strange at first, almost irresponsible, until you realize it is simply self-reliance scaled over time. The saving ceiling. Every saving strategy has a ceiling. You can only save so much. You can only cut so far. You can only preserve what exists. Ownership has no ceiling, only patience. The cost of waiting too long. The biggest regret I hear is not about losses. It is about delay. I waited too long. I was too careful. I didn't realize how fast time moved. Saving delayed discomfort. It also delayed growth. What financial freedom really means. It does not mean luxury. It means resilience. It means surviving disruption without panic. It means choosing how to spend your days. Savings help you survive short storms. Assets help you live through long ones. The choice every American faces. Eventually, everyone chooses, consciously or not. Preserve what you have, or build something that replaces you. Neither choice is wrong, but only one leads to independence. What I hope you take away. Saving is honorable, but it is not sufficient. If you rely on saving alone, you are relying on the past to protect the future. The future requires engines, not vaults. What comes next? In the final part, I will explain how to think about assets without complexity, why boring investments outperform exciting ones, the minimum structure needed to replace income, and how ordinary Americans quietly build freedom without headlines. Saving is where responsibility begins. Ownership is where freedom starts. Why saving feels responsible but quietly fails you. Walter Hayes. There is something deeply American about saving. We were raised on it. Save for emergencies. Save for retirement. Save just in case. Saving feels adult. It feels disciplined. It feels safe. And that is exactly why so many people never question it. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Safety is not freedom. Saving protects the past. It does not build the future. Saving is defensive. It guards what already exists. But wealth is offensive. It moves forward. It expands. It adapts. If your financial plan is built entirely on preservation, you are not preparing for opportunity. You are preparing for stagnation. America does not reward stagnation. It punishes it slowly. The silent erosion. Most savers ignore. I have watched careful savers lose ground without realizing it, not through bad decisions, through time. Inflation erodes purchasing power. Taxes quietly skim returns. Healthcare costs rise faster than savings grow. Markets outpace cash. Your money stays still. The world does not. Saving without growth is like standing on a moving sidewalk going backward. You may not fall, but you will never arrive. Why enough savings is a moving target. People tell themselves, once I hit this number, I'll feel secure. But the number keeps changing. Because expenses change. Because fear adapts. Because life expands. Saving creates the illusion of control. Ownership creates actual control. The emotional trap of cash. Cash feels powerful because it is liquid. You can touch it, see it, count it. Assets feel abstract. They fluctuate. They require patience. They demand understanding. So people cling to cash, even when cash is quietly losing value. This is not irrational. It is emotional. Why Americans overweight safety and underweight structure. Our system teaches compliance. Pay your bills. Avoid mistakes. Follow rules. Don't lose money. It does not teach leverage. It does not teach systems. It does not teach compounding ownership. So people become excellent savers and remain permanent workers. The moment saving becomes a liability, there is a point where saving more does not reduce risk. It increases it because it delays learning. It delays ownership. It delays exposure to real-world asset behavior. The longer you wait, the more intimidating action feels, and fear grows in proportion to inactivity. Wealth is not built in comfort zones. Every meaningful asset I acquired felt uncomfortable at first. The first rental, the first equity investment, the first private deal. Each one forced learning. Each one forced adaptation. Each one reduced future dependence. Comfort feels good, but comfort rarely compounds. The difference between preparedness and paralysis. Preparedness asks, what can go wrong and how do I absorb it? Paralysis asks, what if I lose control? Saving answers paralysis. Structure answers preparedness. One avoids pain, the other absorbs it. Why so many retirees feel betrayed? I've spoken to countless retirees who did everything right. They saved, they contributed, they followed advice, and yet they feel constrained because no one told them, saving gets you to retirement. Ownership carries you through it. Without ownership, retirement becomes a slow drawdown, and drawdowns create anxiety. The truth about retirement accounts are tools, not solutions. They defer taxes. They encourage discipline. They provide exposure. But they do not replace income. They do not create optionality. They do not eliminate dependence. They must be paired with ownership outside the system. Otherwise, they simply delay decisions. Why financial freedom is a process, not a moment. People imagine freedom as a finish line, a number, a date, a milestone. It is not. It is a gradual reduction of force, less pressure, less urgency, less fear, until one day you notice something subtle. You are no longer reactive. The real measurement of wealth. Wealth is not how much you have. It is how little your life collapses when something goes wrong. Markets drop, jobs change, health fluctuates. Does your structure absorb it, or does everything wobble? That is the test. The American paradox. We are the most financially informed society in history, and one of the most financially anxious. Why? Because information without ownership creates awareness, not security. Saving creates awareness. Ownership creates insulation. What financial freedom looks like in practice? It looks like income that arrives without negotiation, expenses that are deliberately limited, assets that require less attention over time, decisions made slowly, not desperately. It looks ordinary from the outside. It feels extraordinary from the inside. Why most people never make the shift? Because the shift is quiet. No applause, no promotion, no immediate validation. Just small, disciplined decisions repeated for years. America celebrates motion. Freedom is built in silence. The question saving can never answer. Saving answers, how do I avoid disaster? But it cannot answer, how do I gain independence? That requires something else. Ownership, time, patience. What I learned too late, and you still can use. If I could speak to my younger self, I would say this. Saving is where responsibility begins, but it is not where freedom ends. The moment you can save is the moment you must start building. Waiting longer does not make it safer. It makes it harder. The final distinction. Saving prepares you for emergencies. Ownership prepares you for life. Saving preserves options. Ownership creates them. The closing thought. If your plan depends entirely on your ability to continue working, you are not free. You are prepared. And preparedness is not the same thing as independence. Saving is a chapter, not the story. The story is what you build next. I am Walter Hayes, and if this challenged how you think about money, that discomfort is not a problem. It is the beginning of clarity.